Today we're talking about starting an at-home yoga practice over 40. These tips are great for anyone who's starting a new yoga practice, but we all know that over 40 there can be some special considerations, not just around injury, but also in making the time and starting a new habit. We all have families and work and lots of things going on, so finding the time can be a little bit challenging. But also, we are getting started with a new habit. And doing that can be difficult to do, especially when you've never done it before. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you don't know me, my name is Laura. I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm also an SVP at a large corporation. And so I know a little bit of something about figuring out how to have a yoga practice in a busy life. Tip number 1, you don't need to be flexible to get started in yoga. That's a myth. So many times I've heard people say, well, I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible enough. Well, I understand where you're coming from because there are so many images of super bendy, not to mention young people, super flexible, doing crazy yoga poses. And it's like, that looks great, but I don't think I can do that. And I hear you. But guess what? Neither can just about everyone else. Those pictures that you see, that's not common, right? Most people can't get anywhere near that. And it's not just because they don't try hard enough. It's because they're physically unable to do so. So when you get started in yoga, you start to realize that not only is the flexibility of the muscles something that you'll be developing and, finding ways to expand into different postures that maybe you couldn't do before. And that's a benefit of yoga, but you don't need to start there. And there will be a point when you can't go any further, and that's okay. All of us have different anatomies and different bones, and the way that those bones are situated in our joints sometimes just won't let us go as far as those pictures would imply that we all should be able to do. So for example, back bending. I've been doing yoga for over 20 years, and I am not a super deep back bender at all. My spine just won't allow it, right? It's about how those bones stick out in my lower back, right? So my bones are a little bit longer. They don't allow the bending that some people can get. And so I just will never have a super deep back bend. But that's not the point, because it doesn't matter what my back bend looks like. It matters what it feels like, right? And the benefits that I get from stretching the front body and just the practice of working body and mind connection. So flexibility, not required. Tip number 2, and it's kind of related to tip number 1, and that is that flexibility is not the goal of yoga, right? So you shouldn't go into yoga thinking, I'm going in because I want to be flexible. Now, that may be something that you want, and that's okay, but it's not necessarily the goal. It's just a happy byproduct of a practice that involves working into the tissues and holding postures, creating warmth, and doing stretches that increase mobility. And that mobility and those stretches are really just the side effect of stopping the day's activities to get on your mat and focus on the body, because we spend so much time in our heads, right? We're just in our heads, we're two eyes looking out, attached to a brain, and we're just going through life getting things done. Well, very rarely do we really stop and pay attention to what's going on inside. And that's what the yoga practice is about. It's about connecting the mind to the body. So we flow with our breath, concentrate on moving with the breath, as in a moving meditation. And that gets us to a place where the mind quiets down, right? And so just in doing the movements linked with breath, we get those benefits, but those benefits aren't what we're shooting for necessarily. It's just sort of what happens when we do the practice. So there's no doubt you'll end up more flexible than when you started. And a daily practice, absolutely. But it's not necessarily the goal. Tip number 3, yoga teacher cues that they give you in the class are just a suggestion. You should not feel that you have to do exactly what they say. And this is important because your body is going to tell you what you need to do. So if the teacher is saying, fold deeper, and you're feeling any kind of sharp tweaking in that pose that you're in, you want to back up out of it, right? If they're asking you to do something that you've never done before, never tried before, you may want to ask them for assistance. And if that's not possible, especially if you're at a home practice, you may want to just sit that out and observe and watch the teacher doing it so that next time you can maybe give it a try. But proceed with caution, right? They'll usually give you modifications. They'll give you options, right? Things that you can do based on what your body needs. And it's important that you listen to those options, and that if you don't hear one that works for you, that you can just sit that pose out and just rest in child's pose or downward dog and just wait for the cues to start up again, doing something that you're comfortable doing. Tip number 4, set a time each day for your practice. So this one is one of the harder ones. So in a busy life, it's very easy to go, you know what? I don't have time every day to do anything, right? Anything new. I've got a jam-packed schedule. I get up in the morning, I'm running from then until my head hits the pillow at night. And that is definitely true. But as you're thinking about your own wellness and aging gracefully, it's really important to find a way to work in a practice that's going to help you age better. And yoga can definitely do that. It can do that by, making the tissues healthier, increasing mobility. Lack of mobility is one of the reasons that we age in pain, right? And so yoga helps you avoid a lot of that. So it's a super important practice. But you don't have to do an hour and a half practice every day. By no means, right? Start small, 15, 20 minutes, right? Maybe it's in the morning. Maybe it's right after work. I've gotten in the habit in the last 12 years of right after work. That's when I do my practice. And the exception is on the weekends when I'll do my yoga in the morning because I've got more time and it's just easier to do, right? But during the week, I'm not a morning person. I'm not really interested in working out or doing any kind of yoga practice in the morning, even though a lot of people find that really exhilarating and it's their favorite time of day. So it really just depends on you. But what I do is every day, whenever possible, if I'm stopping work, I stop my work day, and before I do anything else, I go straight to my yoga room and do yoga. And once I've done that, I come out, I cook dinner, and I go on with my evening. So I might do 20 minutes if that's all I have time for. Maybe I'll do an hour. But the great thing about yoga is that there's so many different kinds that you can choose which kind you want to do that day. So when I come into my yoga room, and that's where we are now, this is yoga room in my house, where I come every day after work, and I sit down in front of my computer and I take a deep breath and I say, what yoga? What yoga today? All right? And just listen for a minute. What do I need? Do I need something that's super relaxing and chilled out? Do I want to move a little bit to move some stress and tension out of the body before I relax? So I want to maybe a blended class. Do I really want to get some exercise and build some strength? So maybe I want, a vigorous vinyasa class. Or maybe I just want to do some yin. Like I really want to just get into the connective tissues and not really work the muscles at all that day. Yin yoga is something we'll talk about in another video, but it is A lot of people think of it as restorative, but really it's an exercise. But it's an exercise for the connective tissue instead of the muscles. And so it is a great way to increase mobility. But set a time every day. A daily yoga practice will give you not just the daily benefits of yoga, which is training your brain to have grace under pressure. So it really trains you to have a better stress response when you're doing that practice every day. But also, when you do it every day, you get to where at first it may be difficult to get into that habit, but once you do, if you skip a day, man, you feel it. When you do yoga the next time, you go, wow, that's what I was missing. And it just gets into your everyday life, and it has so many benefits that you won't want to do without it. Tip number 5, make space at home wherever you can. So it doesn't have to be a whole room, but have a dedicated space, if you can, to your yoga practice. If you can set aside just a space, maybe in a room, but that space is clear of clutter, because when it's clear of clutter, your mind is clearer, right? A place where you can roll out your mat. Maybe you have a place where you can prop up a laptop next to a window, and so that you can glance outside and just be able to see and connect with nature while you're doing your practice. I love to use the trees outside as a focal point during balances, right? Because it just, even if you can't get outside that day, it gives you an opportunity to connect with nature, and see the outside world, right? And just have that as part of your practice. So if you can close the door and keep out any pets or kids or husbands or wives or parents or anybody, leave the world behind as much as you can to close the door and practice. That's not to say that you can't practice with a little chaos going on. You absolutely can. But for that bit of sanctuary each day, I encourage you to set aside a space and make it your own, make it peaceful, and it'll be a little retreat for you every day. So those are my tips for starting your at-home yoga practice. There'll be lots more to come. If you liked this video, please feel free to give it a like and give me a subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you would like me to talk about. Aloha.